Yesterday I was talking about how someone can get into the path of nirvana or self realization, and why it is the most valuable way of living our lives, um, and why someone needs guidance. So, uh, today we are going live again, and we are live with the audience. So, she's here to ask questions in person. Anybody who wants to ask questions in person and go on camera are also welcome. Yeah,
The journey to the self. Um, I think it begins the very moment we ask the question, "Who am I?" And there are multiple reasons why um, why we might have ended up in a situation where we question everything, and then we can't understand about everything else. So we come back and we see that this whole being is something that we don't understand, and we this feels like the center to understanding everything else, and we ask that question, "Who am I?" And mm, there's a journey that begins immediately after that, and based on our interest and willpower and thirst, we we find um, we come across different people or gurus or practices.
I think you should wear that.
um,
Yeah, we come across various gurus. A, this is a very personal journey, but we need support from various people.
yeah, we definitely need support from various people, and many sages and many people. I used to think this was just a mention in the tantric parts, but even otherwise, that if you see, um, many gurus, they say that this path is actually like a double-edged sword, and it's a razor's edge. Um, but today we often come across um, the perspective that um, this is all a very joyful path, to enlightenment or the spiritual journey. But in reality, it is not, because what you're trying to win is your or what you're trying to um, yeah, I can say win, but I don't know if that's the right word. Your mind and your ego, and that's the biggest war that's happening within yourself.
I understand your question. So, the question here is, it is generally thought to be a very happy, lively, beautiful path to enlightenment. But when in reality you walk that path, it's a fight. You are not actually so happy. You are actually finding yourself miserable at times.
Yeah.
And that is how you are doing this because this is what is right.
Yes.
Correct. That is your state. That is the kind of mindset that you have right now, understanding that you have right now. And that is where you think you have landed. The I I understand that, like, I empathize with you. I can understand that you are feeling this. But in reality, joy or happiness for somebody who chooses the path of nirvana should be in the fact that the person is doing the best possible thing on earth. The scale of happiness that this fact should give them should clearly uh, outcompete any kind of misery or trouble that the person is facing. Otherwise, there is something wrong with your understanding or your conviction. No matter how much physical or mental trouble you go through, the very understanding that you are going towards nirvana should give you so much happiness and bliss that any obstacle that you face must be considered trivial or should seem trivial already. If something doesn't seem trivial and if it seems like a large obstacle, then it means that your understanding has become flawed over time. Something has gone wrong with our understanding, primarily. Something has gone wrong with our intent. Or, in the very beginning, we would not know that nirvana means losing our own selves, our own attachment to our identity.
Yeah.
Of course, if you are feeling painful, you must come up with another question. Who is feeling this pain? Is it really me? Is the person feeling pain really me? The pain is felt by the mind because it has to give up control.
Correct.
The pain is felt by the ego, and that requires courage. And every time you show that courage, you can appreciate yourself a million times because you have shown the courage required to let go of your ego, your identity. And of course, that pain should be that you should have tears in your eyes, tears of joy that you are successfully giving up your identity. Only when you give up your local identity, you get a global identity. That is enlightenment.
Um, because we have a lot of information floating around and many ideologies about this. Many ideologies about Vit yoga, Vit tantra, Vit or the spirituality or the journey, enlightenment journey, spiritual journey. Um, we have made this whole concept of um, how we are not the body and how we are not the mind a very a showcase material. It's like, yeah, I know that. Yeah, I know that is. Yeah, yeah. Everybody thinks they know that. And we all think we know that. But in reality, when we actually experience it, when when you start giving up all the ideologies, the intent, about all the silly things, or be it in the physical reality, when you start giving up all that intent, what we experience probably is not sadness, it's more of blankness that the mind perceives as sadness. And we don't know how to be in that blankness. Like, the mind is continuously, I mean, this is not just with the current system that we live in. It has been this same thing always. Because the mind is always distracted. It is always trying to catch itself into some movie that it plays. Um, it is it is very difficult to understand the difference between these two states, where there is sadness and where there is blankness. And because the mind does not want to give itself up, it it easily picks up the reality of sadness and thinks, oh, it is depressed, sad, it does not know what to do with life, has no intent, no purpose. But in reality, we are not taught to deal with blankness, or the kind of work that we do, or the kind of system we have created around ourselves is not letting us be enough in that blank state and try and understand what is really happening, or be in that observant state for a long time in that blank state. Either we have to keep everything aside and sit idle, or we need to probably give up our jobs and just go into some deserted place and just live alone to understand that. So how do we find that balance? And of course, it is not like today I start this journey and tomorrow it ends. Um, I know the uh, date or time when I will actually find the balance. It might take months, it might take days, it might take years. So this is a continuous process. It's also very easy to get carried away with the kind of work that we do today. So
A good teacher would know the difference between two states. A state where you need minute corrections, mm, like so, the way people call micro control. So, a teacher would know how to micro control, when to micro control an act that you're doing, and when to give up control completely and let you go by yourselves. For example, while you observe the breath, if a good teacher wants a good teacher, definitely, if you're lucky enough to have a good teacher and the teacher is by your side and he or she observes you doing that practice, then they will ensure that you fall on the right track. And for that, a certain degree of micro control is also required. Only a couple of times, so that that becomes your habit. And then you should also be given time to be yourself, explore, but do this particular thing in that manner. For example, I can give you, um, say, it's much easier to give examples from dance or from martial arts, where the teacher controls, like tells you that this is not the posture. There is a little more bend that is required in your, say, spine, or you should bow down a little more, or you should bend in this direction a little more. That's micro control. Something similar is required while you observe and go through this path as well. That's one thing which is lacking in today's society, where you don't have good teachers to help you stabilize in the path in whatever actions that you're doing when required, and then give you freedom. That's a serious concern that most people have. And even if you get that, it's on the student's end. Once you have a teacher like that, it's the student's decision, right? So people today think they know something just because they have heard a couple of words about it. Or people think they know something because they have heard that word a couple of times. Most people today across the planet will tell you that they know artificial intelligence. If you try to dig deeper and deeper as to what they know about artificial intelligence, you will realize that people don't even know what intelligence means. And that's how they ended up calling something artificial intelligence. So if something happens by fluke and that happens to be right, you appreciate, so that every time the same fluke happens and call it intelligence. That's basically artificial intelligence, the origin of artificial intelligence in modern day. There's no logic. People are aghast, are, are in some kind of wild dream where they think that the universal intelligence will enter into a mission created by a human and gain consciousness. Um, well, idiots are everywhere, so we can't help it. Of course, I'm not telling that that technology is not helping people. I'm not telling that that technology can outcompete people for jobs, all that disruption, everything is fine. Calling it intelligence is wrong because people do not even know what intelligence means. So just because people have heard that word multiple times, they think they know what it is. You see a lot of examples like this. Mm, that's because of the modern education system, which which actually brainwashes kids into thinking that they are getting educated. They are not getting educated, they are getting some kind of training that will help the system stay intact. These are systemic problems. Because of all these systemic problems, the society at large is in serious trouble.
So, in that sense, when we think about this, adding a bit of seriousness there, right? Because it is also about what, how do I raise my kids and how do I raise my grandkids? When I add that level of seriousness and think through this, when we are the modern education that we are getting, there is around 12 years of schooling, which we 12 years of schooling, and there's 2 years of pre-university, and then there's 4 years of degree. So if I combine all of that, well, um, we have around 18, 20 years of education that we are pursuing, and so, and when I think about, that is a very if you see, there is very little you can go wrong there. Let's say there's a concept you misunderstood, it is okay, because um, that the subjects that we are studying today is not something that will impact you at a very personal level. I'm not saying not knowing a concept or misunderstanding is the where I'm trying to get to is, for example, if I am not breathing the right way, I'm inviting a lot of diseases. I'm inviting a lot of trouble to myself. My mental balance is gone. My physical balance is gone. The health. So this is actually very intrusive. So in that sense, if we see, we had Gurukula system, and it was a wholesome learning. It had about it. It had everything, because we as a culturally we gave importance to understanding ourselves, which is understanding more of the supreme intelligence, the universal intelligence we call. So all our education was directed in that sense that um, our intelligence connected this microcosm and macrocosm, the relationship between that. And if we see in that sense today, um, yes, it is a personal, and it is a personal journey. I have an inquiry, I have a thirst, I go find a guru, I don't know. As a student, there is no way you can actually select very intelligently the right guru. It is based on your past, uh, it is your birth quality and your thirst. Based on that, you get a certain guru. And we probably go there, we get an initiation, we get a mantra, probably we get a some yoga practice, maybe one or two, and we then take it back home and we practice at home, where the environment at home is not that everybody are actually doing the same thing. They're in their own world. So I'm literally almost like um, in some circus, and I'm doing something. So there is no where you mentioned about micro control and how that close observation is needed. That is not happening today, and that is also something that I worry about. Um, because sometimes I get that doubt. Oh, is this the right way? Am I doing it? Because we get hundred thousands of questions when we are meditating. Oh, is this how it should be done, or is this how I should be perceiving it? Is this how I should be thinking about this? Is my understanding about this right or wrong? And we just carry that within ourselves, and we try to find answers within ourselves. We are actually, we don't have access because we have created this huge organizations around yoga. And yoga, certain yoga teachers today, if you see, they have created this huge organization where you don't have that personal access, and they're not observing you at a personal level. And these are generic practices that's just out there. You can even read a book and start practicing. But there is a belief and faith that because there is an initiation process, somehow that a spirit will guide us when we need help. Um, so I have this question of how how much right it is to believe and hope that I get initiated. There are certain practices, I take it back home, and I've spent very little time. When you think about modern education, we are spending 20 years at least. But here, how much time would we have spent? Even if you are attending certain group meditations or whatnot, the actual guru who's passing on these practices, there is no, that observation is not there. So is it even right to be involved in such an organization where you don't have that direct access or someone to observe you and say, mm, this is the change you need?
See, if you look back into Indian culture, I don't think um, there was a time when a student was learning from a guru without being in the presence of the guru, like the guru guiding him continuously. The modern structures that you see, at least I can put it this way, the modern structures that you say have never existed in the past. It's a very pathetic time. Mm, it's should they take it seriously, these structures where the teacher is not guiding you in person? People take it seriously. It's not like I cannot be the absolute like judge of if they should take it seriously or not. But being capable of selecting that right place comes from whatever merits they have in their life. So if they are choosing wrong organizations or any organizational structure as their guideline, obviously they are making a mistake. But it's not me who should tell that they're making a mistake. It's some voice from within them that should be telling it, right? So it should spring from within them. If they even get an opportunity to be in the presence of someone who can guide them, I know that people who are joining these organizations will go and be in their presence, right? But then they do not have that opportunity. If they don't have that opportunity, what should they actually do? They should resort to whatever practices they can verify within themselves, or they should resort to such teaching which has been written in time tested scriptures only, not these organizational structures. For example, if you do not have a teacher in person talking to you on a daily basis or a weekly basis at the most, right? Helping you, guiding you in person, observing you from time to time, and helping you grow, then to you should resort to scriptures rather than choosing to join an organization where you are in a hierarchy and the person who regularly talks to the head of the organization is two or three levels above you. Spirituality does not, cannot have an organizational structure. Spiritual whatever sadhana, whatever um, growth that can happen is not something that I can impart to you, and you at a half baked stage can impart to another person who is at a quarter baked stage, and that person can impart a small fraction of his baked brain to someone else. No, that's not how spiritual directions work. That's how nonsense works. That's the job of charlatans. I tell you a full joke, you tell at least half the joke, at least half the laugh, quarter of the joke. A small fraction of the joke is also enough for someone to giggle at the end. That's fine. But this is not a joke. This is serious practice where you are putting the willpower, your willpower, and you are dedicating your life for. And when you are dedicating your life for something, you cannot hand over yourself to a joker. If you are doing so, you are dumb. I don't have to say it, you are calling yourselves dumb. And structurally, socially, we have devolved sufficiently that people take such organizations seriously. What is the whatever, if not in presence, in the direct physical presence of a guru who can completely guide you, you have to resort to yourself and look at time tested scriptures. Time tested scriptures are scriptures that were written at least 1,000 or 2,000 years ago. Scriptures that were not even written but were of oral origin and then got written. So you have to compare multiple scriptures of from, you can take various religions for example. You can take the scriptures of all the religions and find common ground in all of them about what's the idea behind self-realization? What's the idea behind finding God, or what spirituality means? How life gets better for a person beyond the physical plane? All this you can do enough research, and then, or if there's something in your culture, and if your culture is very very old, and if there's some scripture running in that culture, you can pick that, and you have to pick only those parts of that culture, of that scripture, which refer to zero external action, which means no physical activity other than with your breath. With little to no physical movement, if that scripture is telling you something, you can follow that scripture. Because whenever there is any physical movement, that should only come from a guru in person. Because bend your spine a little more would be a guidance that the teacher gives to a student after observing how the student bent the spine. That cannot be written into a scripture as a metric.
Mm.
That cannot be effectively written. Though you take all kinds of metrics, even if you put a compass, if you take an angle, all these things, length, do all kinds of measurements, still the you cannot put that teacher into a box, into a book, right? Whatever can be scripturally given to you is given to you in various excellent books on yoga, on tantra, and they are very ancient books. You can look at you can read them, and be careful when you read their English translations, because the origin
Yeah.
in their original languages the words would have meant something else, and they might not be the literal translations of those words. So be careful, take it with caution, be suspicious of what was written there, refer to multiple places, and then you will get the essence of it. Just take the essence of it and do all this. If you are unable to be in the presence of a teacher whom who who you know has significantly progressed in the direction of self-realization, um, if you can find someone, nothing better than that. These are testing times. Very few people get such opportunities. And when we don't have such opportunities, we have to trust scriptures, and from the word of what is written, very few people have that willpower to trust it, put that absolute trust, and follow through what's written in the scripture. If they do, and if they are lucky, they will land up somewhere better than where they are.
Do we have any questions?
I think we can wind up now. So I'll be back live tomorrow again at 11.